What's a perfect fall afternoon? Right now it's about upper 60s or so. The sun is shining bright, getting lower in the sky, and in a few hours, it's gonna be down in the 30s. Well, today on the Deerskin Diary, I'm gonna be spending the night in this 18th century style one-room log cabin. Just me, the cabin, no insulation, no electricity, just the fire in the fireplace. And I have a few thermometers here that I'm gonna set around the inside of the cabin and outside the cabin to see what kind of temperature differences we get throughout the day and into the night. So you can see just how warm one of these cabins actually is. So stick around. I'm gonna chill out in this cabin tonight to see just how cool 18th century style living can be. This cabin is built like many that were on the colonial frontier, with nothing more than stacked logs, mud, chinking, and a fireplace. There wasn't a whole lot more to them except for the occasional wood puncheon floor or a second-story loft. Now this particular cabin has a dirt floor, which is probably going to add a lot to the cold and the dampness. The insulation comes from the logs themselves, and any holes like the portals for shooting out of in a self-defense scenario are going to keep it drafty pretty much at all times. In the 18th century, life was all about maintenance, so keeping the chinking in place and the cracks filled and small little plugs to fill these holes were vital to help get through the winter. Now I've got 3 of these thermometers, and I'm going to place them around the cabin and outside the door and track how the temperatures change throughout the evening and into the night. Now inside the cabin right now, it's reading 64 degrees. That's with no fire in the fireplace yet. Outside the cabin, it's reading right at 69 degrees. So I'm gonna find a place to put this one inside the cabin, somewhere here in the middle, so we get a good idea of what the temperature is kind of closer to the bed. I'll be sleeping on this bed over here. And then I'm gonna put another one over here by the fireplace where we would reasonably expect it to be warmer. First, I got to get a fire going. In 18th century cabin life, the fire was the heart of that cabin life, and it took families an inordinate amount of time to cut the sheer volume of wood that they would need to last through a winter. Remember, this is, heat and cooking and warmth and just a focal point for people to be around. And you would even keep a fire going typically, even when it's not that cold outside, to either drive away the dampness or to have, especially some sort of method to be able to cook. One thing that I have found with these cabins is that, when you're only in it for a night or two, it's kind of hard for the fire to keep up. But if you're here for several days and you maintain that fire in the fireplace, then it tends to warm up the cabin overall, and it becomes much easier to maintain a decent warm temperature. Well, things are good for now, but the sun is going down soon. Those shadows are getting much longer, and that's when things are going to start to become a little more complex. I'm going to have to keep that fire going. Right now, the temperature outside has already dropped to 60 degrees. That's a drop of 9 degrees in about the last 15 to 20 minutes, which seems like a lot. But the mountain range that's off to my left over here is actually going to cause, I think, a lot of that cold air to sink down here to the bottom of the valley. And that's going to make this spot a little bit colder. Well, the sun is down, the moon is up, the next milestone of the night has been met, and it got cold quick. The current temperature outside is 48. The temperature under the bed right now is 55. And let's see what it is over here by the fire. And it is 87 right now by the fire. So that's pretty good. Good temperature difference between right here at the hearth and no more than about 6 or 7 feet away by the bed. Got a modest supper here of bread and cheese. And man, I can really feel the sort of icy fingers of that cold coming up through the damp ground through my moccasins here. So I can see the value of any type of wooden insulation on the floor, like a puncheon floor or something like that. Well, I'm going to sit right here and eat for a little bit, and then we'll check in after a couple of hours or so, right about the time it's time to turn in for the night. And I'll probably check it one more time throughout the night, depending on how often I wake up, I guess. And we'll kind of try to keep tabs on what happens throughout the night. Then, of course, right at dawn, right before the sun breaks the horizon, to see if it cools down any there. Not sure if I'm going to be able to keep the fire going all night. If I get to sleep and I don't want to wake up, then I'm not going to wake up just to stoke this fire as long as I'm warm. But if I'm cold and I need to restoke this fire, then I'll do my best to turn the camera back on and get these temperatures monitored so we can get a little bit more data about what's happening in this 18th century cabin. Well, it's getting to be about 9 o'clock, which is going to be about my bedtime tonight. And right here by the fire, it's about 80 degrees. But about 6.5 feet away by the bed, it's 56 degrees. And just outside the door, it's 43 degrees. Now, that's about a 30-degree heat loss and not a very broad span of distance. And I think that's mostly because of the gaps in the walls themselves. You've got some gaps in the shingles up above, and that's causing the warm air to rush through convection to that cold air. So it's like the equivalent of cracking your windows in your car on a cold day and driving around with your heat on. That warm air is rushing to that cold air, and it's just kind of rushing right outside. Now, in a sealed building or a sealed structure, that's a good thing, right? Because the warm air is rushing to the cold air and they're mixing and they're maintaining a better overall temperature as the air mixes between cold and hot and makes for a better average temperature. But here in these cabins, if the cracks exist and if they're not sealed up, then you get this convection issue, and that causes you to lose a great deal of that heat, which means rather that this fire is working overtime to try to keep this small structure warm. All right, well, it's about 5 in the morning now,
and that's my normal wake up time, so that works out. I got up once in the middle of the night and checked the temperatures. I don't know what time it was, but I got the fire had gone out, so it was 59 degrees by the fireplace. Pleasantly, it was 56 degrees by the bed, and in a surprise, the outside temperature actually went up just a bit. It was about 45 degrees just outside, so not going to oversell this thing as a frigid, cold night. I barely survived. Actually, it was very pleasant sleeping conditions, but the fact of the matter remains that once that fire goes out, the rest of the cabin temperature, it was warmer than outside, but not greatly so. So all in all, a decent little experiment. Now the next milestone will be sunrise, and typically the temperature does drop just a little bit before the sun comes over the horizon. So I'm gonna keep this fire going, maybe get some breakfast and coffee going here in a few minutes, and wait for that milestone of daybreak and see where we're at. So yeah, what a fun experiment.
So how warm was this cabin? Well, I'd say it's definitely warm enough to survive. I mean, it is going to hold in some of the heat, but out here, warmth is temporary and something that you normally had to produce, whether that's from chopping wood to hauling wood to burning wood. But I don't think that people who came out here were chasing luxury or anything like that per se. I think they were chasing opportunity, and there was a matrix within their decision-making process that caused them to figure out what they were willing to put up with versus what they thought they could gain from it. And those two things put together are what drove people out into these lands that were pretty hostile and very unforgiving. But in the process of doing so, they were mastering endurance, and they were writing part of the American story. All right, it's daybreak now, and the coldest that it actually got was 37 degrees, and that, ironically, occurred right as the sun was breaking the threshold of the horizon. And that sunrise reminds me that today it starts all over again, and tomorrow it starts all over again, and Saturday and Sunday more of the same. And as the season wears on, you can throw in some wind and some rain and some snow and hail and thunderstorms. And it reminds me of the perseverance that our predecessors had and what they were willing to tolerate for, honestly, what we would consider to be very little in terms of today's gain and wealth. Now, I want to thank Wilderness Road State Park for allowing me to film under a special use permit here, because that process and them approving that process allows me to help bring this back to you as the viewer, for those that would never try this but are interested, or those who simply don't have the capacity to be able to. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you spending your time with me once again as we deep dive into topics like how cold was this cabin. So stay tuned, there's more to come, and I'll see you next time on the Deerskin Diary. Whew.